Dragon Silver, Wizard Gold. Book 1 in the Varthien Saga by Kris Sihto. Chapter 3. Apprentice. 653 OM Tarandir. Year of the Leaping Rabbit. Pugton. The boy looked to the wizard for instructions. Felicity had wandered off, wearing the same vacant expression that had graced the faces of the boys earlier. "I can help pack up and I'll be careful," he ventured, "but I don't think I'll be able to help you move your cat." He looked at the statue pointedly. "How did you get it here in the first place?" The wizard let out a loud, rolling belly laugh. "Oh, we don't need to worry about Susie here," he grinned. "She can take care of herself." Norman tickled the statue under the chin, and to Peter's surprise, the cat looked at him and started purring. "She's a gargoyle," Norman explained. "Artists have a power all of their own, and sometimes, very rarely, they infuse their own life into that of their artwork. A while back it was happening quite a lot because a lot of the priesthood were doing those odd-looking sculptures for churches, and the naming convention stuck. But don't let that change the way you look at our Susie here. She's a sweetheart." "Wow, what does she eat?" "Magic. She doesn't need a lot, just enough to keep the life force from being burnt out on her movement. After all, energy is energy, and it all has to come from somewhere. She eats my failures and the tailings from spent magic." He held out the ribbon that Reginald had dropped earlier, and the cat gently took it in her mouth and swallowed it down. "Waste not, want not, I always say." Peter stared at the cat in fascination, and a stream of questions fell from his lips. "May I pat her? Will she bite me? What sort of cat is she? She's so big. Who made her?" "Yes, you may pat her. No, she won't bite you, except of course if you're threatening her or people she cares about. As for the type of cat, she's a leopard, but there's some artistic license been taken, so she looks somewhat different from leopards in the wild. I have no idea who the artist was, but they did a masterful job. She just wandered into the tower one day. Gargoyles do tend to be drawn to wizards. Quite often if they don't find one soon enough, they starve to death. It's a trade-off. I help her, and she helps me. And just so you know, Susie is quite intelligent. Don't go treating her like a cat or a dog. She has as much intelligence as you or I. She reads quite voraciously. Her mouth is the wrong shape to speak in the human fashion, but if need be, she can scratch down words on slate." The cat nodded in response to the wizard's comments, then looked expectantly at Peter. He reached out a hand to her neck. It was cold and hard with the grainy texture of sandstone, and he was jolted into the realization that she was made of rock. "Wow, you're awesome," he said to Susie. The he turned to Norman, who had opened a large satchel and was placing the chairs into it. "How does she help you?" he asked. The chairs seemed to become engulfed by the bag and disappear. "Well, in this instance she helps me with carting my wares to and from town, and sometimes she's able to help with setup and pack down. Much more of a help than you seem to be at the moment," he pointed out, and Peter looked embarrassed. He turned to the table covered in knickknacks. "What do you want me to pack? Where do you want me to pack it? And how do I do it without turning myself into a hedgehog?" he asked. It turns out, there was nothing much for him to do after all. The live frogs would not allow Peter anywhere near them, setting off piercing sirens whenever he approached. This, it seems, was their purpose in life. Norman had dubbed them alarm frogs and sold them to nobles who worried about theft or poachers. Peter was forced to back up quite a distance while Norman quieted them and then placed them into his hat, which then went firmly back onto his head. The boy, standing in the middle of what had previously been a bustling road filled with buyers, watched the smooth operation of wizard and statue cat as they worked in fluid concert with each other. He felt that he was a point of discord, that there was no point in their dance that he would be able to fit in. He looked down, afraid that he might have made a mistake. There in the mud between his feet, he spotted a curve. It wasn't anything of note, just a line on the ground, but it didn't seem natural. He bent down to wipe away the mud, and a gleam of silver was his reward. Quickly he grabbed the coin and it came away from the ground with a slight sucking sound. His worries momentarily forgotten, Peter rushed to show his new friends his unexpected treasure. "Well done," was the response from Norman, who then thrust the petunia pot into Peter's hands. "Hold on to this, will you?" The cat simply responded with a single raised eyebrow. She was uninterested in anything that wasn't magical, and coins didn't count. The pieces of rope, twigs, and knives were deemed too dangerous for a 10-year-old boy, so were dealt with by Norman, who simply tied them all up in the tablecloth they rested on, with no fuss or bother. There was no table beneath the cloth to pack, and the boy was left marvelling at the fabric that had seemed so solid only moments ago. The cloak rack, including all the cloaks on it, folded down into a small cube, which got thrown haphazardly into the satchel. The rattling cabinet at the back took similar treatment, except it was placed carefully into a pocket on the side of the bag. Finally, the tent, hanging goods included, was folded up by Norman and Susie working in unison, and miraculously altered to form a cart, already harnessed to the big stone cat. "Wonderful job," beamed Norman. "You played a pivotal role. We couldn't have done it as quickly without you. Now hop on board, and we'll be off." Peter was still holding the petunia pot in his hands and couldn't quite work out how to climb into the cart without putting it down first. Finally, he was forced to hand it back to Norman in order to climb up. "I wonder how your friend is doing in here, Peter," he asked, then looked closely into the foliage of the flowering bush. After a moment, he stepped up onto the cart, his longer legs meaning he didn't require both hands to ascend. "Keep an eye on her. She'll be one to watch for," he commented, as he handed the pot back to the boy, who was now comfortably seated. Then, with hardly a jolt, Susie set off at a lope. Peter, confused by the comment, parted the leaves in search of an explanation. What he saw was the oddest thing he had ever seen, even including everything he had experienced today. The worm he had rescued was twined around the stem of the petunia plant. The worm seemed to be looking directly at him, and sparks suddenly emitted from that end. Norman reached into a pocket and drew out a magnifying glass, which he passed to Peter. "Take a good look. That's no ordinary worm you saved today," he said, and the boy took the glass. Peering into a world of magnification, he was shocked to see legs and wings on his worm. Without the aid of the glass, if he squinted, he could just make out the faintest traces of the extra appendages, but he would never have thought to look otherwise. "What you've stumbled across today, my boy," intoned the bearded man by his side, "is not a worm but a worm. A female one at that. She'll grow to be a dragon, if she survives this stage of her life. Most don't, but you've just got her through one hurdle. She probably would have drowned or died of exhaustion or been eaten by a bird if you hadn't rescued her this morning." "Really? A dragon?" Peter was excited. "What colour will she be? How do you know she's a girl? Does she collect treasure? What's her name? Is she—" "Whoa! Slow down. I need to be able to remember your questions to answer them. She looks to be a red, which is why I didn't notice what she was straight off the bat. It's easy to miss the red dragons, as they do tend to be the same colour as earthworms early in life. I know she's a girl because she's sparking. Only female dragons breathe fire. Not many people know that. I think it's so they can defend their young better. They tend to be very protective of their young. How this dragon came to be here, I have no idea. I haven't heard of any dragon lairs nearby, and it's odd to see one without its mother nearby. She will collect treasure, but at the moment she's very small, so she won't have any yet." "And what else did you ask?" "Oh yes, her name. She'll get to choose that when she's a bit bigger." Peter thought about that for a moment. Then he pulled his newly found silver coin from his pocket. "Dragons need treasure, don't they?" he asked. Norman looked at the boy through narrowed eyes. "Yes," he said slowly. "They need to eat metals to grow healthily. They don't eat much, but they hoard it for times when it's not so easy to find. What do you have in mind?" "I don't need this money, but she does. So I'm giving her this silver so she grows big and strong." With that, Peter thrust the coin's edge into the soil of the pot, burying it halfway. Hurriedly, the tiny worm uncoiled from the plant and made its way to the coin. She wrapped herself tightly around it and seemed to be kissing it. Looking through the glass, Peter could see the truth of it. Not having a mouth large enough to bite into the metal, she was licking it with a long tongue. "I'm not sure that was the wisest thing to do," stated the wizard firmly. "Dragons are not pets and shouldn't be treated as such. I don't mind if you help her out, but it could lead to trouble later." "I don't think helping someone get food is ever a bad thing to do," Peter stated flatly. "If I were her, I'd think it was good that someone helped me, and I would then want to help other people in the same way." Norman grinned. "Good. I like it that you own your decision. Just remember that she has to do things on her own. She's intelligent, just like you, or I, or Susie, and she needs the ability to make her own way in the world." They continued on their bumpy way home. They had left the road and were now making their way through an overgrown field, with not even the trace of a goat track to mark their way. Peter's forehead furrowed. "Does Susie know where she's going?" he asked Norman with concern. "Oh, yes," Norman answered nonchalantly. "It's always the scenic route to the tower. Can't be going the same way twice." He winked at Peter. "You can't get unwanted visitors if nobody knows the way, can you?" "But how is Mum going to find me, if nobody knows the way? You said she could visit." A chuckle came from beneath the beard. "I don't think that's going to be a problem. When your mother is determined to do something, do it she will. Determination is a magic unto itself and can bend time and space if it's correctly applied. She'll find us. Just wait and see." So Peter sat and watched the world move past the cart, one bumpy tussock of grass at a time. From time to time, he peered in at the small passenger in the pot plant in his lap. She seemed to be sleeping, still wrapped tightly around the coin. Soon a small tower appeared, and his stomach started to clench as the realization suddenly set in. This was his new life now.